due to the bloating, severe joint pains, loss of smell, or sometimes taste sensations. Are these natural? If these were to happen to someone else, to somebody who is supposed to be healthy, would you say these were natural? Would you call these normal symptoms of health? How could doctors, especially female doctors in their right mind, tell you that this is normal to a menstrual cycle? And say that your pain, your suffering, the madness that you feel when you are hemorrhaging out your blood, my sisters, the blood that you hemorrhage every month is not made specially off in the corner of some part of your body just for this particular cycle to happen. It is taken directly from your bloodstream. And any loss of blood is tragic to the system. Any loss of blood is a loss of you. When you bleed liquid flesh. The clots you bleed is you. That is the body harnessing or trying to collect the filth and the pathology around it and trying to get rid of it. Sacrificing the luteal lining to get rid of filth. Most women who have filthy constitutions and abhorrent lifestyles have incredibly long pathological bleeding cycles. And as soon as they change their behavior and their eating regimens, it shortens. What does that tell you? That it's a pathology. And that right action, right thinking, right conduct, right gender behavior changes that disease. Now, I am not asking you to go quit your jobs tomorrow, sisters, but guess what? If every one of you said, I ain't taking care of no more white children, I am not going to school, I am not buying anything from the store, I am not buying clothes, I ain't buying any more jewelry, I ain't buying no more damn shoes or Gucci, nothing. You by yourself will shut this shit down immediately. You want to know how much power you really got, sisters? It ain't in showing me how much of a man you can become. It's in showing me what the power of a woman is. And that is using the magnetic principle in drawing. Not expressing that yang electricity that shows me that you can play basketball. I can play basketball. I could probably run as old as I am with the women's help, and fit right in. But it don't show me nothing. If you can shut down this society by non-doing, all praises due, sisters. Now you got the sister, now the brothers got to get up and do something. Because that's when they come after you. You're not going to buy? What you mean you're not going to buy? You better buy. Then they're going to give it to you. Come on in, girls, it's like half off. Half off, sale. I'm there. But when it ain't half off and you ain't going for it, and you say you ain't buying it even though it's half off, down to rock bottom prices, nothing in this country is moving because all the sisters ain't buying? Whoa! But you're not ready to suffer because they've played on your matriarchal, matrimonial, and you remember matrimony, M-A-T-R-I-M-O-N-Y, is a female, understand? Huh? Matrimony, to be married, that's female. Think about the words you're speaking, brothers. Marry, M-A-R, is from the female, mar, marine, water. Matrilineal, matrimonial, matrix, female. It's feminist run. The state runs it. The state is the hermaphroditic parent. When investigating, and this is from my thing called demystifying, this is a section called demystifying what our New Age sisters like to call the blood sacrifice. When investigating the physical phenomenon of the menstrual cycle, we must first and foremost ask ourselves the question, why? Why would Nature Mother create a microcosmic representation of herself as a being that would hemorrhage and spill its most precious life fluids each month? What is gained by a traumatic event afflicting so precious and sacred a matrix? A matrix that was designed and created to be the shaper, the incubator, and the nurturer of the crown of all creation. Please contemplate the following. When we breathe, we gain oxygen and other vital elements to sustain life through the revitalization of cells. When we eat, we gain nutrients to replenish the cells so that they may continue to centralize consciousness and the biokinetic life force within the body matrix. When we sleep, we gain a rejuvenated body temple that we may continue to function at peak levels of strength and awareness. When we urinate and defecate even, we gain relief through the elimination of waste byproducts of nutrition, to recycle these byproducts back to the earth for the shared continuity of all life. When we procreate, we gain continuity of life and the bestowal of awareness. When we study life, we gain knowledge of self. When we pray, we gain the affirmation of the existence of God. When we menstruate, we gain what's the gain? They tell you, well, during that time is when we make our most estrogen. What? The only reason you're making that estrogen at that time is because, bless your body temple, the divine spirit has orchestrated it so that it had to do it at that time to accommodate the pathology. Now, if you are not looking at it as a pathology, you will not see it as a pathology, and therefore you will not agree with what I'm saying with you, and you will go on doing whatever it is you're doing. And the species will continue to degenerate into oblivion. But I'm saying something that usually I say things 10 years in advance, and that nigga crazy. Don't stand too close to him. It might be contagious. But I'm telling you now, sisters, you hold the key to the resurrection of the African Kemetic genius in your womb. And because you bleed so much, because so much testosterone toxicity is floating through your bloodstream at this time, because you're growing more hair than I am now, we're in trouble. You think this issue of blood was not a pathology? Well, they talk about it in the Bible. To my devout Christian sisters, those of you who believe faithfully in the written word of God as revealed in the Bible through the teaching of the gospel of Jesus the Christ, I bring your attention to a portion of New Testament scripture which makes a distinct reference to the fact that the menstrual cycle was truly considered a disease. Of course, you may scoff and claim that my interpretation of the following verses are just that, my interpretation. You may also believe that only a priest or minister educated in Christian schools of theological orthodoxy could give you a more valid and true interpretation. Well, beloved, all I ask is for you to contemplate my viewpoints with an open mind and give truth a chance. Mark 5:25 to 34. And a certain woman with an issue of blood 12 years. She had an issue of blood for 12 years and had suffered many things of many physicians, and had spent all that she had, and was nothing bettered, but grew far worse. When she had heard of Jesus, came in the press behind and touched his garment. For she said, if I may touch his clothes, I shall be whole. And straightway the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue had gone out of him, turned him about in the press and said, who touched my clothes? And he looked about to see her that had done this thing. But the woman, fearing and trembling, knowing that she had done, came and fell before him and told him the truth. And he said unto her, daughter, thy faith hath made thee whole. Go in peace and be whole of thy plague. What does he mean by that? Yeah, preacher says, well, she had an issue of blood. He never, and I heard, what's his name? What's that? Pastor Pig Feet talk. What's his name? What's his name? Not even Butts. What's the asshole? Money. He has the name Money. Creflo Dollar. Now that nigga is made for the church. With a name like that. Creflo make a dollar. Creflo pimp a dollar. He's on in the morning. He ain't here. He's in Atlanta somewhere. Now, before we continue, I humbly request that you read the above passages again, and so I will. At a certain time, a woman had an issue of blood 12 years and had suffered many things by many physicians and had spent all she had and had nothing better. Do these words sound familiar, sisters? It means that doctors weren't shit back then either. They take your money like they do today and they don't tell you nothing. As a matter of fact, I am in awe of sisters who could walk in to look at a doctor that looks worse than she does and ask that doctor for help. That sucker looks like he's one step from the grave, and she's saying, "Physician, heal me." He looks horrible, and you are looking to this particular priest for your salvation. Especially you sisters with fibroids and menstrual cycles for 8 to 15 days. How many of you have sought the help of your physician only to find thousands of dollars and thousands of days later? In this sister's case, 12 years equals 4,380 days. After being medicated with all types of experimental hormonal drugs, coagulants, iron pills, and whatnots, that your monthly suffering continued anyway. How many of you were told after years of enduring this pathology that the only recourse left to you, since you already have children, was to cut it out? Seems like nothing has changed concerning the practice of medicine for over 2,000 years. And think on this as well. If the issue of blood or menstruation was not considered a debilitating sickness, why then is it referred to in the Bible as a plague? The issue of blood, what was she bleeding from 12? She was bleeding for 12 months or 12 years, or even 12 minutes. She would have been dead. What are they talking about? They're talking about the menstrual cycle. You see, in the ancient of days, if you bled, you were sick. And when she reached out to touch them, she was not supposed to be in public. That's the thing. You secrete menstrual toxins. They have shown that in your hands, if you touch a live flower, you can kill it in minutes with the toxins that you secrete. It's shown. That's why you sisters isolated yourself from the community. We didn't throw you out. This feminist bullshit. You built the huts and you did not stand straight up because you stayed reclined. Standing straight up puts strain. The gravity puts strain on your uterus. Just like nursing babies, you didn't just sit down. You nursed babies on your knees, sitting back on your heels to cut the blood flow to the heart so that the flow of the blood would not be interfered with by any of your anxieties. It would slow the flow of the blood so that the flow from the breast to the baby would be clear and concise from the sucking. And the sucking helps the parotid glands to become stronger. The parotid glands are connected to the frontal lobes. Sucking the mother's breast helps to enhance intelligence in the baby. This nipple that you're giving this child to suck, now you wonder why there's no connection to you and your child. I'm speaking also to you about the fibroid tumor and the psychospiritual reasons for diseases. In our sisters today, the stress to make it, the stress to survive, the stress to become self-sufficient, the stress to make sure that you have for your child, the stress to make sure that you are at least a contributing factor in your family is overwhelming. You have taken on twice the work. And I applaud the strength and the resolve you sisters have shown. But it's time for you to take an inventory of what your actions have reaped. Because you do more work than any other woman. Yes, you do, and that is why you are a danger to them. Let me tell you something about the feminist movement and why you were recruited after the civil rights was destroyed. Civil rights movement and the movement that you talked about with Malcolm and Marcus, these were masculine movements. These were male orchestrated, male dominated, male led movements. And these were movements of warriors orchestrating, women supporting, not out front trying to pick up a gun unless the front line of men were destroyed. That's the only time you see women begin to come down front, is when their men were being decimated. But these particular motions, these particular movements of Marcus, Malcolm, and Martin, these were movements of messiahs. You understand? That's why the National Security Council put out a particular paper to make sure that no black male would ever rise again to become the quantitative leader of his people anymore. Because essentially that is a threat, not only to him economically, but biologically as well. Because he knows that if everybody was loving everybody, white people would be wiped out in 5 generations. That particular experiment did not work. Now, the order went out after they killed your king and your prince. See, you don't get that. Let me tell you something that I have in the book where I began to speak about the killing of the king and the castration of the prince. You know that they castrated Malcolm, right? Oh, yeah. When Malcolm was killed, that Illuminati bastards took his balls, took his phallic symbol, his power. Just like this bastard Bush dug up the grave of Geronimo and slept with his bones. Because that's the way they deal with the power. See, it's deep. Check. Why we have a misunderstanding of how the feminists have played us through the divide and conquer. They've even created an anathema, some sort of cyst on the black female consciousness called black feminism. Whatever the hell that is. Feminism, and listen carefully, feminism was orchestrated by the white male for the purpose of putting distance between him and the black male. For reasons obvious to all of us. Now, I know some of my people out there who's saying, why are you talking that rhetoric again, Reverend Valentine? Ain't we past all that? Yeah, they made you believe you were past all that. But we still in it. You understand? And our sisters fell for the okie doke. Now, players in the game. There are 2 types of feminists, and pay attention, my beloved sisters. Recognized and made popular by the work of a woman called Christina Hoff Sommers, who wrote a book called Who Stole Feminism? It appears that the types of feminism which existed before Miss Sommers' arrival on the scene were a little too watered down, trivial, and bland for her taste. So a distinction had to be drawn between the 2. The term gender feminist was introduced to take the place of, or to make the distinction between, what Sommers and others like her characterized as an equity feminist. According to her, the equity feminist of, I guess, Susan B. Anthony stock, is one who believes, and I quote, the oral and legal equality of the sexes. An equity feminist wants for women what she wants for everyone. Fair treatment, no discrimination. Amazonian, or gender feminism, on the other hand, is based on, quote, an all-encompassing ideology that says American women are trapped in a patriarchally oppressive system. An equity feminist believes things have gotten better, much better for women. Gender feminist thinks it's getting worse. I agree with the last sentence, but not for what you believe or the feminist believes. It is getting worse. And the following quotes are socio-political viewpoints and philosophical ideologies taken directly from the feminists who have, over the last 30 years, molded the behavioral contexts that you now operate in, sisters. In reality, the philosophical roots of radical or gender feminism could definitely be traced back to neo-Marxist, socialist resurgence in this history, the kind inspired by the works of Karl Marx and Friedrich Engels. The book Origins of Family and Property and the State by Ingalls laid the bridle path for a marriage of Marxist and gender feminist ideologies. In it he states, the first division of labor is between men and women for childbearing. The first class antagonism in history coincides with the development of the antagonism between men and women in monogamous marriage, and the first class oppression with that of the female sex by the male. And, this is quote, oppression and class systems began when men realized that they were fathers. And in order to ensure that they knew who their children were, they enslaved their women by marriage. So according to gender feminism, the logical solution to the problems that make up our societal ills is for the state to step in and help women by A, eliminating all private property, B, making divorce easy and in the woman's best interest, and C, legitimizing illegitimacy, making it necessary, D, that a father know who his child is, forcing women into the workplace for their own good, and F, placing children, an added burden to a woman's freedom, into daycare facilities with surrogate mothers, creating employment for other women, so that all class problems would disappear. Remember now, to the gender feminist, man, woman, husband, wife, mother, father, brother, sister, son, daughter are all class distinctions. The Dialect of Sex, or the Dialectic of Sex, written in 1970 by Shlomo Firestone, was one of the first unyielding, unequivocal, femme-fascist literary statements dedicated to the cause of Amazonian feminism. Listen carefully, sisters. Quote, to ensure the elimination of sexual classes requires the revolt of the underclass, that is, you women, and to seize control of reproduction, restoration of women's ownership of their bodies, as well as feminine control of human fertility, including both the new technologies and all social institutions of childbearing and child rearing. And just as the end goal of socialist revolution was for the elimination of economic class distinction, so too the end goal of feminism must be, unlike that of the first feminist movement, not just the elimination of male privilege, but of the sexual distinction itself. Get rid of sexual distinction itself. Genital differences between human beings will no longer matter culturally. Listen, sisters, because everything that is happening today, 25 to 30 years later, is a reflection of what I'm about to read to you. And if you don't wake up now, sisters, you will be caught in a situation where you're going to have to act like this just to get yourself a meal. To top it off, Firestone even holds nature herself responsible for the oppression of women. She says nature is responsible for the oppression of women. Listen carefully. She says that natural law will have to be decommissioned and no longer considered a functional reality. Listen, the natural is not necessarily a human value. Humanity has begun to outgrow nature. Listen! We can no longer justify the maintenance of a discriminatory sex class system on the grounds of its origin in nature. Indeed, for pragmatic reasons alone, it looks as if we must get rid of it. Nature. That shit sends chills up my spine, because that's exactly what these women are doing. And you are following, just like lambs to the slaughter, everything that these women have cleared the path for you to act and behave like. Here it goes. Another woman called Women in Revolution, Heidi Hardeman, says, the woman question has never been the feminist question. What we need to understand is how sex, a biological act, becomes gender, a social phenomenon. Okay. Gender and sex are not separable principles. Sexual intercourse and the biospiritual components of procreation, according to the original blueprints and construction of the One Most High, could not be or take place unless the proper components of gender, that is, the distinctions, are there. Yeah. This is where we see the homosexual agenda being subtly incorporated to make us believe that sexual intercourse can and should be done by anyone, same gender partners included. In other words, the ultimate reasons for the existence of two sexes, the anatomical and psychological distinctions of gender, and the act of sexual intercourse itself, procreation for continuation, should no longer apply. Here is yet another example of where the westernized Eurocentric propensity to fragment nature into convenient, manageable little components so as to gain intellectual, psychological, and commercial control of it, divide and conquer, sex from gender, plays itself out again. Quote, how people propagate the species is socially determined. Whoa. Whoa. Listen to what she says. How people propagate the species is socially determined. In other words, I have a sexual organ, you have a sexual organ, and society molded it. This is what she says. The strict division of labor by sex, a social invention common to all known societies. To all known societies. I guess she means all of them that still have their sense. All of them who have not gone insane. The strict division of labor by sex, a social invention common to all societies, creates two very separate genders. It thus helps to direct their sexual needs and helps to ensure biological reproduction. Yes. In more imaginative societies, listen, in more imaginative societies, biological reproduction might be ensured by other technologies. These are the feminists who have molded your thinking, who have molded you. This particular woman's thing in China, in Beijing, I got some paperwork that was sent to me by George. And in it, it said that they are now on a mission to deconstruct the components of gender in all Western societies. In other words, they are eliminating gender from the vocabulary. No longer will you know what gender is because their description of gender will be this hermaphroditic behavioral complex of information and instructions that you will be given from now on. So sisters, put on your pants, not realizing that your vagina is a breathing instrument and that you are suffocating it. Put on your boxer briefs. Put on all of the men's clothing that you have, because there is no such thing as gender anymore. But let me warn you, sisters, that there is law, immutable law, natural law. And every time you offend your own mother, Mother Nature, she will whip your ass. Sisters, if you do not understand that your gender conduct contributes inevitably to the specific sickness you now feel, and don't get angry with what I'm saying, because I'm not saying anything to hurt you with. Don't start going in and start feeling like I'm bruising some part of your feminine ego, which, by the way, is the feminine ego being bruised that is the precursor to your fibroids. Not only is your feminine ego bruised, but because you are so stressed out, your body and the progesterone that you're supposed to be creating estrogen with, you are now creating testosterone with. Now you say, well, what's the scientific principle behind that? Fuck the scientific principle, because if you had hair growing off your lip, it damn sure don't mean you're making estrogen. So don't ask me no shit about, okay, could you prove that here? Where does it say that, Reverend Valentine? That shit that you need references for. References, as I was told, is a female principle. They need some form of authority. So you have to look for footnotes. Oh, who said this first? Oh, okay. Did the Bible have footnotes? No. It's bullshit. They're giving you information, context, when they tell you, sisters, to go and look, and you think you're coming out with your PhD. All these educated fools come out, and they got their PhDs, and they're telling you references from what they learned. They have not 1 ounce of intuitively, instinctively sponsored intelligence. It's all been fucked away by the education system, by the stress brought to bear on you, my sisters, for doing artificial work, for using your eyes, destabilizing the vitamin A in your body, thus causing all kinds of estrogen anomalies in your body. Do you know that you weren't supposed to be reading? Why do you think sisters dealt with the griot principle? Why were you taught from mouth to ear? Because reading causes strain on the brain. You use an inordinate amount of very precious specialized nutrients that you need to create estrogen. And you flush them from your system. Estrogen is flushed, forfeited, or completely left unused when you read too much. Your eyes become weary, and you wonder why you have unstable menstrual cycles. Well, it came one day, it came another day. You running for professorship, or you running for council leader and all this crap. You're running for male energy, so what's going to happen? Nature has to definitely fill the demand. You want to act like a man? Well, yeah, okay. Nature will show you her ability to accommodate you. And I'm saying this with all love, my sisters. And I'm going to take a break at this moment, and I'm going to be at my table. And I would want you to come. I have only a few of these, and I expect them all to be gone. We'll see you after the break.
It's going to be a 15-minute break. Patronize the vendors out there.